Peace, peace, peace. Welcome to Esoteric Daydreams, The Awakening, right? Where if you thought the nightmare of the Abrahamic system that you know is wicked, wait till you understand the hidden system, right? The one that's helping build right in front of you, and you're one of the builders. Help build it. Hopefully you're not. Hopefully we could break you out of that and you could stop participating in this mind game, right? So let's change over here real quick. Let me turn this down. All right. Now let's get into this. All right, now this series right here we would be calling othering. Watch for the tricks of the devil. Right now, inside othering, there's separation technique. Right, on one side, it benefits. Clearly, if it's going to benefit the one who's doing the othering, it's not going to benefit those who are getting othered, right? So we're going to show you this system, but how it is working from the inside as well, right? So it's not about, just how the European, has used it on us, but how, our own has aided and abetting on using this same system, right? Protecting your third eye, perception, right? The way you see things is what you need to protect. And the best way to do that is to have an understanding of the world and how it operates around you, right? So that's why it would behoove you, right, to learn psychology and philosophy as well as teach these things to the youth. So they're growing up into this. So as they're walking through the world, they have a full understanding of this system. Right. So, I say watch for, those within the community, such as, Moors, Ados, Abos, which is Aboriginals, who will use the system of othering to psychologically trap its victims. Right. And so we're going to show you how this othering works. Right. Okay. So what is othering? Othering is the term defined another person or people as separate from oneself. In phenomenology, the term other and the constitutive other distinguishes other people from the self as a commutative, right, constituting factor in the self-image of a person as acknowledgement of being real. Hence, the other is dismissaler to and the opposite of the self, us, and the same, right? The commutative other is relation between the personality, essential nature, and the person's body of the human being. The relations of essential and superficial characteristics of personal identity that corresponds to the relationship between opposite but correlative characteristics of the self, because the difference is inner difference within the self. So the way you might perceive yourself, or the way it has been constructed for you to perceive yourself through buzzwords, right? And we'll be getting into that as you enter into, let's say, the free world, you having the ability to make choices and decisions, right? That's when these organizations are there, with an open hand waiting, to indoctrinate you. So that's why when, we read through the book, the Master's Carpet. And if you read it, which I advise you to do, right? I would say that as he's talking, and this is like in chapter 1, right? He's talking to his son, Henry, I believe, right? And he's telling him, his son was telling him about how, they was trying to indoctrinate him. He was like, yeah, basically everywhere you go, once you walk out the door, they there. So these are the things you must explain as in order to have, a philosophical and psychological mind, in order to explain it, to your youth before they walk out into, their system of recruiting, all around them, right? By capitalizing on how one might be identified versus how one might identify themselves, these devils are able to construct self-defeating beliefs. We'll call that black magic. In this case, the objective is to crush one's identity. When one hears sayings such as they stole our identity, our religion, and our culture, which they have done is successfully installed a parasitic complex that allows for hurting, right? We should understand that a complex is a structure of the unconscious that is objectified as an underlying theme to make power, right? Inability. So on one side, as they're using this to give them power, they're putting a complex of your inability or the statutes, right? The status or lack of, by grouping clusters of emotions, memories, perceptions, and wishes in response to a threat to the stability of the self. In psychoanalysis, it is antithetical to driving, meaning that the way a person sees themselves, right, based on their psychological makeup when they were growing up. Like I said, before you basically had, free roam, you coming in and out the house when you want, you doing these things, there was a structure, right? So the schooling on your way to school, the kids that you played with, the things that you talked about, right? And so as you grew, you was introduced to more things of outside of that structure, or it would appear to be outside of that structure, right? So now when you were able to make your own decisions, remember, inside of your growth period, say you start at 16, right? So from 1 to 16, you were still intaking, right, a structure that was designed for when you walk out there, for you to decide which chamber, like 36 chambers, Wu-Tang, that you would go in, right? And so now with these strengths or lack of, is where you will be placed in this pyramid, should we say, right? So an example of a complex would be as follows, right? The last 500 years, we can safely say that Europeans have raped and pillaged the continent of Africa. This has had major influence on the lives of every quote unquote melanated person on any European controlled land in a profound way, where they dictate our overcomings of their social restraints, giving these people many thoughts, emotions, memories, feelings of inferiority, triumphs, bitterness, and determination, centering on that of one aspect of our life. If these thoughts were troubling and pervasive, Carl Jung, right, might say the person had a complex about their self identity, right? So you growing up, you can develop a complex, right? So you can feel, a certain way depending on your experiences, right? Through your stages of life, right? So as you went through the growing stage of supervision, right? Those things, build, or lack of character, right, might affect certain elements within your character, prevent you from excelling within, the social construct that has been designed, right? Which is ever changing, mind you. That's where they say, about oh, you old school, you're not advancing. You know what I'm saying? Like that. That's what it is. The reality of complexes is widely agreed upon in the depth of psychology, a branch of depth psychology, a branch of psychology asserting that the vast majority of the personalities is determined and influenced by unconscious processes. Complexes are common features of a psyche landscape, according to Jung, accounting of the psyche and often becoming relevant in psychotherapy to examine and resolve, most especially the journey towards individualization or wholeness. Without resolution, complexes continue to exert unconscious, mal-deprived influence on our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors to keep us from achieving psychological integration. Right? So now we understand what this othering is meant to do, right? To install a complex based on complexes that was already there, right? It's like like a white person talking about don't hold your gun like this. It was like a big thing I noticed, like probably all last year throughout Hollywood. Like this was the white man teaching the black man don't do this, like this type of a thing. So or so then they can say little slick things like, remember how watermelon and all of that was the thing. So now it's like Hennessy and Timberlands. Like they can say those things, but not in an encouraging way, but actually a disparaging way, right? So as we examine the conditions and qualities of otherness, the characteristics of the other, which is the state of being different from, alien to the society identity of a person into the identity of the self, i.e., we're not black, black is a social construct, even melanated. These terms, if we think about how they try to corner you into using these terms, that's othering. Trying to place you in an uncomfortable position of referring to yourself as black, because now they build this whole case on why you shouldn't be black, while setting, the path for melanated. Oh, when they was talking about the 666, they was really talking about carbon, right? So they're paving a way for society to move in one direction. Wow. That's what social construct is, right? Just so you can understand, this is what social construct really is. If we were to examine, quote, the woke community and the disclosure of psychology, the term otherness identifies and refers to the characteristics of who and what of the other, which is distinct and separate from symbolic order of things, right? Depending on your community, there's certain symbols, words and phrases like, oh, around here we don't fight fair. Like, these type of things are symbolic within, these structures, right? And, gang activity and stuff of that nature. So, I'm not saying just that, and I'm just giving an example, the extent of othering and how it can be used to pressure and sway a person. So it's basically a benefactor for who's ever using it in its proper way, right? Distinct the symbolic order of things from the real and authentic and unchangeable, from the aesthetics, art, beauty, taste, like some chick, being a snob, he took me here on a first date, from political, philosophy, Republican or Democrat, from social norms and social identities. Then we get the Moors, the Ados, Abos, and from the self, how you see yourself within those structures. Therefore, the condition of otherness is a person's nonconformity to and with the social norms of society. And otherness is the condition and disenfranchisement, political exclusion, affected others by the state and by the social institutions, e.g., the profession. So, getting blackballed, them not, excluding you just by knowing certain things. So you'll know people who at some time wasn't even trying to give their children urban names. Now you see it as, indoctrinating them into the keyboard crew. You know what I mean? It's these things that you would notice, in order to, appease those who are othering you, right? The person labeled as the other from the center of society. So it goes, right? i.e.g. the professions, invested with the corresponding social political power. Therefore, the imposition of otherness alienates the person labeled as the other from the center of society and places him or her at the margin of society as being the other. You see, so, like the ringleader, they say don't be a leader, be a follower. Well, there's ringleader can designate that he's the ringleader by, signs and symbols in these things. And through those signs and symbols, it can also go through how you say it, the use, right? Because now, to be alienated, it can be used, to either get there, in initiations and these type of things, right? Oh, and by the way, don't forget to hit the like, the subscribe, and the notification bell so you can be notified whenever we go live or we upload content like now. And most importantly, I never say this, but yo, hit the share button. Don't keep this information to yourself. This information needs to get out there so we can, free the people all at once. Right? So, when you see those contents, hit that share button too, man. Get it out there. Don't be afraid, man. Okay, let's go. Right? And by the way, check out my
late night
book.
fender been deleted.
My phone. Right, check out my book, Street Skelzy, Knock 'em Out the Box. It's available on Amazon Books right now, as well as my other book, Freemasonry and Yanni Worship, The Second Killing of Jesus, right, which I'm actually in the middle of changing its format. So give me a few days and I'll be uploading the new format, and I'll be getting a new cover made, right? That's why I haven't been going hard on that. So once I get, the new cover made, then I'll I have it's thumbnail up there too. All right. So let's get back to this, people. Right? The term othering or otherizing describes the reductive action of labeling and defining a person as subaltern native, as someone who belongs to a social subordinate category of the other. The practice of othering excludes persons who do not fit the norm of the social group, which is a version of the self. Likewise, the human geography, the practice of othering persons means to exclude or and displace them from the social group to margins of society, right, where maintained social norms do not apply to them as being the other. So whatever rules that they're applying, say, the water fountain, right? I got a picture of that. So say, the water fountain, and you can drink from it, but no, they can drink from anyone. You can only drink from one. So say their water fountain broke. They can tear that sign off and put on the whites only fountain. You see what I'm saying? So from sitting in the back, with a bus, these type of things, these forms of exclusion, othering, right? They put a complex within, the people. The concept of self requires the existence of a constitutive other as the counterpart entity required for defining the self. Accordingly, in the late 18th century, George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel introduced the concept of others as a constituent part of self-consciousness perception with the self, which complemented the position about self-awareness capacity for interception, profited by John Gottlieb Fetch, whatever. I know I'm not getting his name right, but it's what it is. Right? So it goes John Stuart Miller, 1806, 1873, introduced the idea of the other mind, and in 1865, in an examination of William Hamilton's philosophy, the first formulation of the other after Rene Descartes, which is actually the person who I used the picture right here. And why did I use him? Because this is basically the father of black magic, the spirit of what we call Freemasonry today, right? Like we would say, like Socrates would be the spirit of Christianity in my eyes, someone, the symbolization of dying, trying to get the truth out, right? Just the symbolization, I'm just saying, right? Okay. Iman Hasler, 1859-1938, applied the concept of the other as the basics of intersubjectivity, the psychology relation among people, right? The psychological relations among people, and Christian meditation and introduction to phenomenology. This is 1931. Hasler said that the others is continued as the altered ego, constituted as the altered ego, as an other self. As such, the other person posed and was etymologically problem of being only a perception of the consciousness of the self. And that's why I use like Sasha Fierce from Beyonce, Eminem, from Slim Shady, from Marshall Mathers, right? Redman, Reggie Noble, right? Okay, in the beginning, and being in nothingness, the essay in phenomenological ontologically, right? Ontologic, right? I'm getting it wrong right now. Ontology, right? 1943. Jean-Paul Sartre, 1905 to 1980, applied the distinction of intersubjectivity to describe how the world is altered by the appearance of the other, and how the world then appears to the orient to the other person, and not to the self. The other appears to be psychological as a psychological phenomenon in the course of a person's life, and not as the radical threat to the existence of the self. And that mode in the second section, 1949, Simone's de Beauvoir, right? 1908, 1986, applied the concept of otherness to Hegel's dialect of the Lord of the Bondsman. Hetzcraft, right? I ain't gonna get that. Right, founded it to be like the dialect of man-woman relationship, thus a true explanation of society's treatment and mistreatment of women, right? Intersubjectivity, right? Existing between conscious minds, shared by more than one conscious mind, right? So, those who are aware of what's going on and they can agree on these actions, like, yes, this is of the unconscious minds, the things that we can do with them. I'm sorry to laugh. Right? Because, the gang culture, I told you this is a part of that system as well, right? The psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan, 1905. I want you to pay attention how these dates constantly, keep pushing forward. Right. And so that means that there's a field of study that's always there studying you and how to move you so that it will behoove you to get up to date instead of getting in the past, worrying about, looking like Indians or no offense, or Egyptians or whatever, Hebrews, and understand what's really taking place here. Right? And the philosophy of ethics, Emmanuel Levinas, 1908, 1995, established the contemporary definition, usage, and application of the constitutive other as the radical counterpart of the self. Lacan associated the other with language and with the symbolic other of things. Levinas associated the other with the ethical metaphysics of scripture and tradition. So as you see, right, the ethical metaphysics of scripture and tradition. So keep in mind, remember, we look at these two groups and how they are related to religious factors, whether it be the Hebrews or the Muslims, right? Through the Moors, right? This is just what it is, right? The ethical position is that, my fault. The ethical position is that the other is superior and prior to the self. Right. In the event, Levinas reformulated the face-to-face encounter wherein a person is morally responsible to the other person, to include the proposition of Jacques Jedry, right? I'm not going to get his name right, 1930. 2004, about the impossibility of the other person being an entity entirely metaphysical pure presence, that the other could be an entity of pure otherness and alterity personified in the representation created and depicted with language that identifies, describes, and classifies. So, as you approach, using this art, you are supposed to at least, and this is why they, when you listen to them tell you that black is a social construct, they're doing that because, it's ethical for them to tell you that they practicing this form of othering on you. So you have to listen to them using keywords because you'll be hearing them tell you in its most ethical form that they're doing this to you. I don't mean to laugh, but it's true, right? The conceptual reformation of the nature of the other also includes Levinas' analysis of the distinction between the saying and the said. Nevertheless, the nature of the other retains the priority of ethics over metaphysics. Right. So, the way you might want to do things, like the way that things are just, right? So your ethics, you could have low ethics. Right. Let's take a look at this, right? In the beginning, in Being in Time, because we've seen that, it says Martin Heidegger argues that the concept of time prevalent to all Western thought has largely remained unchanged since the definition offered by Aristotle in the Physics of Hegel says Aristotle's essay of time is the first detailed interpretation of this phenomena, time, which has come down to us. Every subsequent account of time, including, right, Bergens, has been essentially determined by it. So, the way you see time, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I just wanted to, bring that up to show you, you could go look these things up and understand in depth. This, if you're dealing with the philosophical and psychological part of things, these are the paths you want to follow. Now, if you want to understand the art, so I'm doing both. I'm allowing you to understand the philosophical and psychological, even if I'm going to deal with, the art of it, because it's impossible not to. But I'm not going to stand there and read the whole thing to you. Right? So, because I'm already doing one article. So, in the psychology of the mind, e.g., R.D. Lang, the other identifies and refers to the unconscious minds, to silence, to insanity, to the language, to what is referred to and what is unsaid. The complex is meant to address that complex, right? Nevertheless, in such psychologic and analytic usage, there might arise a tendency to relativism if the other person of being of pure abstract alterity leads to ignoring the commonality of truth. Likewise, problems arise from unethical usage of the term, the other, otherness, and othering to reinforce ontological divisions of reality, of being, of becoming, and of existence. Right, so when you see the Moors, they removing Noble Jew Ali saying the black part, and now they're moving over to being these sovereign citizens, which is cool if you want to be sovereign, right? But the Moorish from the black Muslims, now they're moving over and using that to claim themselves as being natives. We seen that do Dr. York, and his movement. So I just, put this right here to show some articles, of the tribals and, history, between the blacks and indigenous people. Right. And so while you're doing these things, you might be kind of, helping to blackwash history. Apparently that's a thing that's happening, right? And I've seen it. Relativism is a family of philosophical views which deny claims to objectivity within the particular domain and asserts that validation, right, in the domain and relative to the perspective of the observer or the context to which they are asserted, right? There are many different forms of relativism with a great deal of variations and score and differing degrees to controversy among them. Moral relativism encompasses the difference in moral judgment among people and cultures. Ethical relativism holds that there is no absolute principle regarding normative belief, justification, or rationality, in that there are only relative ones. Right? Authentic relativism, also factual relativism, is the doctrine that there is no absolute truth, i.e., that truth is always relative to some particular frame of reference, such as the language or a culture, cultural relativism. Some form of relativism also bear resemblance to philosophical skepticism. So this is why I tell you to understand, psychology and philosophy, you will be able to point out and understand these systems. So you would have to understand philosophy and psychology to truly have a grasp on this. And like I say, and the best way to have a grasp is to make sure you amongst, the community of us. So then that way, and and that means your kids and everything. So that way you don't ever have to worry about them being indoctrinated because they were anything that they doing, and it's through leadership and not following. If they're able to grasp it, not everybody is able to grasp it, but at least you made the proper attempt, right? Descriptive relativism seeks to describe the difference among cultures and people without elevation, while normative relativism elevates the word truthfulness of view within the given framework. So just understand, these type of things. Right? The totality and infinity, an essay on extraterritorial, Emmanuel Levinas said that previous philosophy had reduced the constructive other to the objective consciousness by not preserving its absolute authority, the innate condition of otherness by which the other radically transcends the self and the totality of the human network, without which the other is being placed. As a challenge to self-assurance, the existence of the other to the matter of ethics, because the ethical properties of that other equals the primacy of ethics over ontological and real life. Now they're saying, right, now say if you was to ask, somebody and they go, so you saying that this system hasn't worked, look at slavery and, look at these things, right? That Freemasonry has contributed to and changing the structure of society, right? By saying that, the abolishment, the aboriginal, that abolishments, whatever, man, right? The abolishisters, from, like the 1800s and all of that, who was out, saying that they wanted to end, slavery. These were all people a part of this Masonic system, right? So they would use these things and saying, so you're saying that it hasn't been beneficial. And I say, like Martin Luther King, integrating us into a burning house. You know what I'm saying? You figure it out, right? Okay. From that perspective, Levinas describes the nature of the other as insomnia or wakefulness, right? So we say this woke, right, type of thing. The ecstasy and extraordinary towards the other that forever remains beyond an attempt to fully capturing the other's whole otherness is infinite. Even in the murder of an other, the otherness in the person remains uncontrolled and not negated. Do you understand that, while people are saying that they woke, a lot of them are actually in a trance that they can be pushed and maneuvered to, right? Infinity of the other allowed Levinas to derive other aspects of philosophy and science as secondary to the ethics. Thus, the other is sees me to the other do not affect me as examples of the same genius united with my neighbor. My resemblance or common nature, individualism of the human race, or chip off the old block. The other concerned from me from the first. Here, fraternity precedes the commonness of a genius, right? My relationship with the others as neighbors give meaning to my relationship with all others, otherwise than being and beyond essence. Meaning that, I get it. You go to a group where you fit in because in that way, right, you won't be othered. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of times, even in that, there's with the quote unquote alpha. So then you're being dictated by that situation. So you can become a part of that, but probably, just lone wolf it, I guess. That's what I did. Right. Jacques Derrida said that the absolute authority of the other is compromised because the other person is other than self and the group. The logical authority otherness is especially negative in the realm of human geography, wherein the native other is denied ethical priority as a person with the right to participate in geopolitical discourse with an empire who decides the colony's fate of the homeland of the other. So we can look at Africa and see, here it is, this is mine, but you're dictating everything about it. In that vein, the language of otherness used in Oriental studies participates the cultural perspective of the dominated relationship, which is characteristics to homogeny. Likewise, the sociological representation of the feminine as a sexual other to man reasserts male privilege as a primary voice in social discourse between women and men. Right. So, I had to put the ladies, voice in there. Right. We'll be getting more into that too as well, right? The colonial presents Afghanistan, Palestine, and Iraq, 2004. The geographer Derek Gregory said that the U.S. government ideologically answers to questions about reasons for the terrorist attack against the U.S., 9/11, 2001, reinforced the imperial proposed purpose of the negative representation of the Middle East other, especially when President George Bush 2001-2009 rhetorically asked, "Why do they hate us?" as political prelude to the war on terror 2001. Bush rhetorically interrogation of armed resistance to empire by the non-Western other, produced in us to them mentality in American relation with the non-American people of the Middle East. That's why I remember I don't know if you remember, but like they was beefing even with France and talking about freedom fries. Like we're not calling them French fries no more. They was using this. So that same rhetoric is used when you hear the "we not black" rhetoric, right? And all of the compounds, because all they're doing is socially construct and showing how they can shift and maneuver the people with this psychology. Right, this is just psychology at work. This is why I'm showing it to you, through their relation and then bringing it back within the community, right? Hence, as a foreign policy, the war on terror is fought for control of imaginary geographies which originated from the fictitious cultural representation of the other. Now you take that with, the Egyptians, we are, the Aboriginals and all of those, and Egypt is in America, and all of these type of things, right? Invented, or the tribes of Judah, and they start pointing out the Caribbean countries, and you know these type of things as the tribes. All of this is built up, right? Invented by Orientalists. And cultural critic Edward Seed said that to build a conceptual framework around the notion of us versus them is an effort to prevent that the principal consideration is etymological and natural. Our civilization is known to and accepted there is difference and strange, whereas in fact the framework separating us from them is belligerent, constructed, and situational. So the things that you see, the conflicts, there's always somebody there constructing that conflict. You know what I'm saying? That's why they say the devil is in the details. If you want to find the devil, find the person, in the mix of it, and you'll know where the devil is located. Hey, look what I brought up. Hey, Donald Trump in the Central Park 5 newspaper ad. Donald Trump, don't forget, so I talk to y'all about shills, having these people within our community, right, usually associated with these lodges. And, they with the movement, right? So that's why when you see in all of these events happening, trust, this is all to make these things happen, right? He put out an ad in the newspaper saying, bring back death penalty, bring back our police. It's ironic that Donald Trump put this ad out on the Central Park 5, right? It's ironic that, the defund the police movement, and now they're doing the chaos to bring that system back harder. So you look at these things and you tell me what you gather from it. The contemporary post-colonial world system of national states with independent politics and economics was preceded by the European imperial system of economics and settler colonies, in which the creation and maintenance of an unequal economic, cultural, and territorial relationship, usually between states and often in the form of an empire, was based on domination and subordination. In the imperialist world system, political and economic affairs were fragmented, and the discrete empires provided for most of their own needs and disseminated their influence solely through conquest, empire over, or the threat of conquested homogeny. Right, what is homogeny? Leadership and dominance, especially by way of country or social group over others. Germany was united under persuasion, homogeny after right, 1858. So a lot of this stuff, when we see the Third Reich, you gotta understand, man. You gotta be aware of these three groups, really three main groups, coming hard right now. You know what I'm saying? And none of them is really in favor of black people. I'm letting y'all know that, right? None of these groups, I don't care how they present themselves and how many black people you see might be cool with it right now. Trust me, They don't. If they was around when the final nail is put, with building their system, they would regret, helping, in this system. Right? The manifestation of the other is the form of scientific racism. In this 1857 illustration from his works, Indigenous Races of the Earth, anthropologist Josh DeCant justified anti-black racism by claiming that the features of African Americans had more in common with chimpanzees than humans in the comparison to white people. I'm laughing because I could go on with this, but I'm not. Right now, I'm not laughing at the black people. Let me just leave it alone. Anyway, the racialist perspective of Western world during the 18th and 19th century was invented with the othering of non-white people, which also was supported with the fabrication of scientific racism, such as the pseudoscience of pseudoscience, right? Phenomenology, which claims that I know I got that wrong. In the relation to white man's head, the head size of the non-European other indicated inferior intelligence. The apathy area, cultural representation of colored people in South Africa, right? So this is 1948 to 1994. So we understand this is not something that, wasn't around and even your parents, us, but saying to a younger person, even in your parents' time, this is 94, right? That's like what, 30 years ago. Right? The conquest to the Holocaust, 1941, 1945, with the documents such as the Race Question, 1950, and the Declaration on Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, 1943. The United Nations officially declared that racial differences are insignificant and anthropological likeness among human beings. Despite the United Nations factual dismissal of racism, institutional othering, which is racism. So let's understand, othering is such, right? That's like basically the institution, like the hidden works of racism, right? And white, so-called white supremacy, right? In the United States process the cultural misrepresentation of political refugees as illegal immigrants from overseas and of immigrants of illegal aliens, as illegal aliens, usually as Mexico, from Mexico. So we can look at this, I used, King Kong, as supposed to be this big bad black man who wants, to steal and hold the white woman. You know what I'm saying? He's just so fascinated by her, right? This is othering. Psychological in the back of your mind, so you got to pay attention as you watching these TV shows and these movies. What are they implying? What are they suggesting? That's more important than someone saying, oh, look, they doing a satanic dance. Cool. That's cool. I'm not saying they not doing those things, but how does that play a part in affecting the individuals who is watching the video? I think that's more important than just telling them that they're doing these satanic dances. What is the purpose of them doing them satanic dances in the videos, the gyrating? Like, what does these things mean? You understand what I'm saying? I think that's, way more important and exposing the system. So the only way to truly do that is to understand philosophy and psychology. That's just a fact. Oh, by the way, this is esoteric Hold on. This is esoteric daydreams, right? The awakening, where if you thought the Abrahamic system that was a nightmare, wait till you get a load of the hidden system, right? And by the way, don't forget, check out my book, Street Scalzi, Knock 'em Out the Box. Right? It's about two brothers on opposite sides of the law who must team up in order to find their father's killer or killers. I will soon be having a thumbnail up for my other book, Freemasonry and Yanni Worship, the second killing of Jesus, which is out now on Amazon Books. But I'm doing some things, so I would advise, don't get the one now. Give it like 2 weeks. And I have, all of the updates, uploaded. I'll be doing some uploads today, actually, right? So don't forget, hit the like, the subscribe, and the notification bell so you can be notified whenever new content is being uploaded or we go live like now. Right? And don't forget, man, hit that share button. Let these people know the truth is out there, man. It's time to expose it for what it is. Right? So let's go, right? Okay, two European people, imperialism, military conquest of non-white people, annexation, and economic integration of their countries to the motherland, right? So we seen that in Africa. We seen, right, a lot of them expelling the French and all of them out of their countries now, right? South Africa, Nigeria. We see the problems happening in the Congo, right? So we understand, this system, right? So even though they might be talking about other countries or being vague, just know, always look at it to how it affected us as a whole, right? And this is why when we see this, we cannot allow this to keep being used within our culture if we can build one, was intellectually justified by, among other reasons, Orientalism, the study of fetishionation of the Eastern world and we'll say Africa, right, as a primitive world requiring modernization and civilizing mission. We can see the commercials and all of that, right? Colonial empires were justified and realized with essentially the reductive representation of people, place, and cultures in books and pictures and fashion, which conflated different cultures and people into the binary relation of the Orient and the Occident, right? So we can see that again. We look at Africa, we look at, us in America, and we can see, right, this happening. They'll call it Orientalism, so you look into that, but you can still study what is taking place, right? Created an artificial existence in the Western self and the non-Western other. Orientalists rationalize the culture artifacts of a difference in essence between white and non-white people to fictitious identify, classify, subordinate the people in cultures of the ages, Africa, into the Oriental other, the African other, which existed in opposition to the Western self as a function of imperial ideology. Orientalism fetishizes people and things and three actions of cultural imperialism. One, homogenization. All Oriental people are one folk. All black people look alike. Two, feminization. The Orientals always is subordinate to the Eastern Western religion. These black people, they'd be in the Stone Ages if it wasn't for us, right? Essentialization. A people process universal characteristics thus established by othering, right? So, what's the first black millionaire's name in America? The one who made, the straightening, the hair perm stuff, right? Or the straightening comb, right? These things was to help these people lose their identity, right? So we praising the people who helped so-called, steal our identity, and now we're forced to try to get it back, right? The empire's culturally homogeny reduces to inferiority the people, place, and things of the, they say the Eastern, but I'm going to say African world, as measures against the West, the standards of superior civilization, right? So this is why you see a lot of people underestimate, the great value of Africa, because, they're told, it's this primitive place. Wow, they big up, going to the Eiffel Tower and, just stupid stuff like this. Like anything European is supposed to be this great place, you know what I'm saying, for you to go visit. But when you talk about, the pureness and the beauty of things, they tell you, nah, don't go there. That place is, this uncivilized, that's a backwards place. Just keep that in mind. This is what othering is. Right? The subordinate native and the colonialist identity for the other, which conceptually derives from the cultural hegemony, my fault, works of Antonio Gramsci, an Italian Marxist intellectual. See, follow this philosophy, and you'll understand what they trying to bring in. These are Marxists, right? Communists, right? Just understand what is what they are trying to build right here, even in America, right? And so they have these people who, basically gave up their wealth to have wealth, right? So they signed into this system to get more people to sign into the system, right? And I want you to pay attention to these hands right here. These people, these are what we would call, the tough sellouts. The niggas inside you, right? They'll kill you and all of that. But, they doing it, for their oppressors, right? Colonial stability requires a cultural subordination of the non-white other for transformation of subalternate native, a colonial people who facilitated the exploration of their labor, of their land, and of the natural resources of their country. The practice of othering justifies the philosophical domination and cultural subordination of the native people by degrading them, first from being natural citizens to being colonial subjects, and then by displacing them to the prericy of the colonial and of geopolitical enterprise that is imperialism, right? So we understand what these devils do, and how, they use, those within, to push their agenda. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta understand that, that's why, the saying, the worst devil is a black devil, because they'll try to do the things, so you gotta send them back to the oppressor. But like, hey, oh, you trying to do the work of your oppressor? Here, go back to your oppressor, right? And see if they're gonna treat you well. right? They're not gonna treat you well. You trying to, you know they ain't gonna treat you well. So you just hoping that the oppressor looks the other way as you use this system, right? Using the colonialist false dichotomy of strength, right? Imperial power against native weakness, military, social, and economic. The colonializer invents the non-white other in an artificial dominated relationship that can be resolved only through rationalist noblest oblige, and the moral responsibility that logically allows the colonist self to believe that imperialism is civilizing mission to educate, convert, and then culturally assimilate the other into the empire, thus transforming the civilized other into the self. That's why I had to use Michael Jackson, right, to the point that his offspring is white. So everything that he worked for and he might have took from white people is going all right back to white people. Look at Oprah Winfrey, right? No offspring. Where is her money going back to? Right? So she's allowed to, sit in the world, right, of this, right? But where is any of her wealth going back to? It's not going to go out to anywhere. Right. So then that's when you have to look at, what this system of true integration does. Right? It's going back to them anyway. Right? And establishing a colony, othering a non-white people allowed the colonizers to physically subdue and civilize the natives to establish a hierarchy of domination, political and social, required for exploiting the subordinated natives in their country as a function of empire. The settler colony is an economic means for profitable disposing of people demographic groups. The colonists surplus population of the motherland and to the colonized, the subaltern native to be exploited, who anthologically defined and represent the other as separate and a part of the colonial self. Right? So you lose your identity and it's we sick boss. Right? You see inside the picture it's, begging and basically saying, I'm a man, right? Then while they holding these guns and they showing this power. This was psychologically, if you see the tanks out, right? This was psychologically done to impose, on the minds of the people, even those who was transported into America, right? Even those in Brazil, even those in the Caribbeans and the British Isles, right? We see the same system employed on the peoples and the native, meaning those who were shipped in and those who were already there. The same system. And one was probably you, like say you ship in, the Africans that you had enslaved, and you're showing your dominance over them. That would make these people be more subjective, right? Meaning, to suggestion, meaning that we don't necessarily have to say we'll do anything that's implied by presenting these people, right? These others, like they brought in their own others, the blacks, right? The blacks were the imported others. Othering establishes unequal relationships of power between the colonized natives, and the colonizers, who believed themselves essentially superior to the natives whom they othered into racial inferiority as the non-white other. That dehumanization maintains the false binary relationships of social class, caste, and race, of sex and gender, and of nation and religion. So you see all of these areas that it attack. So this othering, it's a wide range of areas. The profitable functioning of a colony, economic or settler, requires continual protection of the central discrimination that are based to the unequal social economic relation between the civilized man, the colonist, and the savage man. Thus, the transformation of the other into the social subaltern. That's why, when I remember the 120s and all that, that was one of the things that I always noticed. Like, why are you talking, the savage and, in the South, and it sounded Europeanish. In a lot of ways, you know what I'm saying? It just sounded Europeanish, you know what I'm saying? So that was just something I just, one day we're going to have to get into it. So when we do, that part will be addressed, right? Okay, so, now let me say this part. I'm not a female, right? I can understand the female plight only but to some degree. So the things that I put in here, somebody else would probably, be better. I understand the plight, but as far as, let me say, in the black community, I don't see that oppression. Her oppression came from the European as well, because the European allowed her to work. The black woman always was more capable of working than the black man. So I don't know where the oppression came from when it comes to, male and female, and, the black dichotomy of, Western civilization, right? The philosophy of externalism, Simone de Beauvoir developed the concept of the other to explain the working of the man-woman binary gender relationship as a critical base of the dominated relations, which characterizes sexual unequal between men and women. Now, mind you, they had an LGBT in there. I check it out. It ain't got nothing to do with me. I wanted to be fair and say, if you look in there, you will see a section that I did not include. Right? I didn't know how to include it. You know what I'm saying? Okay. The philosophy of feminism, Cheshire Kohan identified the female other as the female half of the binary gender relations, that is, the man and woman relation, and the deconstruction of the word woman, the subordinate party of the man and woman relationship. Produce the conceptual reconstruction of the female other as the woman who exists independently of male definition, as rationalized by patriarchy, right? That the female other is a self-aware woman who is autonomous and independent of the patriarchy, formally subordination of the female sex with the institutional limitation of social convention, tradition, and customary laws. The social subordination of women is communicated, denoted, and connoted in the sexist usage of the word woman. Right. In 1949, the philosophy of extraterritorialism, Simone Wright, applied Hegel's conception of the other as a constituent part of self awareness to describe a male dominated culture that represents women as a sexual other to man. In the patriarchal culture, the man woman relation is society's normative binary gender relation. Within the sexual other is the social minority with the least social political agency, usually the woman of the community, because the patriarchal systematics semantics establishes that a man represents both the positive and the neutral, as indicated in the common use of the word man to designate human beings in general, whereas the word woman represents only the negative, defined by limiting criteria without reciprocity from the first sex, from man. Now, that's why I wanted to point that out, because it's very important when I tell you that, Satanism is vagina worship. So when we hear, Freemasonry and Johnny worship, Satanism, we look at the Freemasonic symbol. I told you it represents, a vagina, the yoni, the yoni, right? And so we understand, how that rhetoric is even being played and has always played, up into really understanding it, right? I always knew it, but I didn't understand it. It's two different things. Like grasping, the context of it. That's how I understood what that system was, right? Because I was able to, grasp what they were saying and said, oh, wait a minute. And so this goes here and this you know what I mean? So, semantics is the study of linguistics, meaning. It examines what meaning is, how words get their meanings, and how the meanings of a complex expression depends on its parts. Part of its process involves the distinction between senses and reference. Sense is given by the idea and concepts associated with the expression, while reference is the object in which an expression points. Semantics contrasts with syntax, which is, which studies the rules and that dictates how to create grammatically correct sentences, and pragmatics, which investigates how people use language in communication. Right, so this is a whole big thing. There's, nobody's gonna master, all of this. Try to get as much as you can. Try to be a jack of all trades, but never be afraid to horn in, on certain subjects. Come back out, horn in. So you might never get to all of it, you know what I'm saying? But at least you understand what conversation is. And that way, if you ever have to go into a particular one that you don't know, you can easily, not be lost in the conversation. That's what the main objective is, not to be lost. You might not fully comprehend, but you do not want to be lost as well. So in 1957, Betty Freudian reported that a woman's social identity is formally established by the sexual, political, of the ornated, subordinate nature of the man-woman sexual relation. the social norm of the patriarchal West, when acquired about queried my fault about their postgraduate lives, the majority of the women interviewed at the university class reunion used binary gender language and referred to and identified to themselves as their social role, wife, mother, lovers. Like they hated that. Like these people hated that even with their success, they still, I love the identity of being, these things, be it like this is their lane. Like I'm happy of having this lane because this gives me, the most of it, right? And lovers, so in a positive sphere of life, and did not identify themselves by their own achievements, jobs, career, business, and the public sphere of life, unaware that women had acted conventionally and automatically identified and referred to themselves as the social other to men. So either way, they was gonna identify themselves as an other, but in this way as a beneficial other. Like this is the things that I get from being, this other. No, so I'm like being othering is not always in a negative context. It can't be, or society wouldn't work, right? Although the nature of society or of the social other is influenced by the society's social constructs. Remember, we talking about, social construct, social class, sex, and gender. So when we talking about, this social construct, when we say social class, right, and we talking about black and, using these terms and placing it up against white people, that's the social construct that is happening, right, through these areas. And as human organization, society holds a social political power to formally change the social relations between the male defined self and the woman, the sexual other who is not male. That's it, So like I said on this, I understand some of the plights and arguments, but on others, I just don't, like I would have to have somebody really sit down and break that down to a negative diss. I'm not saying that there is no negatives in it, right? I know about the voting and like all of it, just never really addressed it inside this right here. So, right. In feminist definition, women are the other to men, but not the other proposed by Hegel, and are not accentually defined by masculine demands, and also are the social other who unknowingly accept social subjugation as part of subjectivity, because the gender identity of women is constitutionally different from the gender identity of men. The harm of othering is in an anthropomorphic nature of unequal roles in sexual and gender relations. The inequality arises from the social mechanic of intersubjectivity, right? So when we watch TV, we look at shows like Power and all of that. You see the female role is the replacement of the male role, right? So she's, demanding, I guess, this equality within the context of what's going on, right? The Yellow Terror in his glory in 1899, editorial cartoon depicted a Chinese man standing over a fallen white woman. The Chinese man, the other, represents the Boxer movement, and the woman represents the Christian European. So it's the same technique they use, with King Kong, and giving this negative depiction towards black people. It's the same thing, we get out of, the Asians. So it's like, this is their routine. This is how they give it up. You know what I'm saying? So this is how it's easy to spot them, because no matter where they go, you see them using the same techniques, right? About the production of knowledge of the other who is not the self. The philosophy of Michael Foucault, not saying that right, said that othering is the creation and maintenance of imaginary knowledge of the other, which comprises cultural representation in service of social political power and the establishment of hierarchy of domination. That the cultural representation of the other as a metaphor and as a metonymy and as a orthomorphism are manifestations of the xenophobia inherent to the European historiographies that define the labeled non-European people as the other who is not the European self, supported by reductive discourse, academic and commercial, geopolitical and military of the European dominant ideology. Colonialist misrepresentation of the other explains the Eastern world to the Western world as a binary relation of native weakness against colonial strength. Right? Again, we see in Marxist philosophy, the term dominant ideology denotes the attitudes, beliefs, values, and morals shared by the majority of the people in each society. As a mechanism of social control, the dominant ideology frames how the majority of the population thinks about the nature of society, their place in society, and their connection to the social class. So when you hear black and this oh, you're not black, and they start bringing out these books again, you should be able to understand this dominant ideology being used on you with reverse psychology, right? Because that's the key, the reverse psychology. Right? In the 19th century, historiographies of the Orient as a central region of Orientalist studies. Only what they said was the high culture, languages and literatures, art and psychologies of the Middle East, but did not study that of geography, space, and place inhabited by different nations and societies. About the Western version of the Orient, Edward Seed said that the Orient that appears in Orientalism then is the system of representation framed by the whole set of forces that brought the Orient into Western learning, consciousness, and later Western empire. If this definition of Orientalism seems more political than not, that is simply because I think Orientalism was itself a product of certain political forces and activities. Right, so this system, right? Even he's saying he's seeing it at work. He's like, wait a minute, there's something is at work here, right? And so we can see this system working, like I said, in any place where quote unquote melanated black African people or non-black, melanated people are located globally. Any non-white person, right? We can say this for. That's just why the blackwashing is not necessary. You know what I'm saying? Any non, European or non-white person, is a victim to this system. That's just a fact. But I would like to say, don't forget, hit the like, the subscribe, and the notification bell so you can be notified whenever new content or we go live, just like now. This is Esoteric Daydreams, the awakening, where if you thought, right, what you knew about the Abrahamic system, was the nightmare. Wait till you get a load of the truth and you wake up from the daydream. It's gonna be some hell to pay. Don't forget, also check out my book, Street Skelzy Knock 'em Out the Box, which is available on Amazon Books right now. It's about two brothers on opposite sides of the law who must team up in order to find their father's killer. It's a fast-paced book that takes place in the tri-state New York area, and like I said, it's a good read. I got a whole commercial. I'm gonna start letting it play. Right. So anyway, let's get back to this. Right. Don't forget, man. Hit the share, man. Share. Right. Orientalism is a school of interceptions whose material happens to be the Orient. Its civilizations, people, and localities. Its objective discoveries, the work of inenable devoted scholars who edited texts and translated them, codified grammar, wrote dictionaries, reconstructed dead epochs, right? This is what we need to do within our culture, right? Right? The objective discoveries, the work of innumerable devoted scholars who edited texts and translated them, codified grammars and dictionaries, reconstructed dead epochs, produce positively verbally learning, are and always has been conditioned by the fact that its truths, like all truth delivered by language, are embodied in the language. And what is the truth of language, right? And we can think about, they always say in the Bible, in the beginning was the word, right? Nietzsche once said, but a mobile army of metaphors, mononymies, and anthropomorphians, my fault, the short and sum of human relation, which has been enhanced, transposed, and established poetically and rhetorically, right? In which, after long use, seemed firm, chronological, and obligatory to a people. Truths or illusions about which ones has forgotten that this is what they are. Right? So they're basically telling you. Truth is illusions about which one has forgotten that this is what they are. So far as the Oriental occurrent in the essential awareness of the Western world as a term, the Orient later acquired many meanings and associations, denominations, and connotations that did not refer to the real people, culture, and geography of the Eastern world, but to the Oriental studies, the academic field about the Orient as a word. So it's like the same thing. You look at Africa, it wasn't, them telling you about Africa. It was their African studies, right? And, in the academic field, and then giving you this, this Africa as a word, like how you are supposed to perceive Africa just by hearing it. Like, this is putting all of these things in it. So all of the things you hear them say it about black is all of the things that they putting in it. So how you are supposed to perceive that, right? In a negative or positive, right? And Cosmographer by Sebastian Munster, European Virginia, is the Castiograph center of the world. Right? In the Eastern world, the field of optimism, the investigation programs and academic curriculum all of and about the essence of the West, European as a cultural homogeneous place, did not exist as a counterpart to Orientalism and the post-mortem era. The Orientalists practiced the historical negationism, the writing and distorted historics about the place and people of the East. And this place will say Africa. Histories, right, continues in contemporary journalism. So this system is still there, right? And the third world political parties practice othering with fabricated facts about threats, about the non-existent threats, political, social, and military, that are meant to politically delegalize opponents' political parties composed of people from the social and ethnic groups designated as the other in this society, right? So it goes octodisalism, right? I know I got that wrong, right? Is the distorted and stereotyped image of Western society. The Occident, which can be held by people inside and outside the Western world, and which can be articulated or implicit. The term emerged as the receptacle of the notion that Ontarioism popularized the literary critics Edward Seed, which refers to the Western stereotypes of the Eastern world, the Orient, historical negationism, also called historical denialism, is a falsification or distortion of the historical records. It should not be conflated with historical revisionism, a broader term that extended the newly invented and evidence, fairly reasoned academic interpretations of history. In attempting to revise the past, historical negationism acts as illegitimate historical revisions by using techniques inadmissible in proper historical discourse, such as presenting known forged documents as genuine, inventing ingenuous but implausible reasons for distinguishing genuine documents, abstracting conclusions to books and sources that report the opposite, manipulating statistical series to support a given point of view, and deliberately mistranslating texts. So this is how you spot them. Right, so this is the system, and we see that inside, right? So when we see these people, we understand their bag of tricks. We understand otherism and the things that come with it. All of these little bags of tricks that lie within this othering system. Othering a person of a social group by means of ideal ethocentricity, the ethic groups of the self that elevates and assigns negative cultural meaning of the ethics other is realized through cartograph, hence the maps of Western cartographers emphasizes and boasted artificial representation of the national identity and natural resources in the cultures of the native inhabitants of the cultural inferior to the West, as culturally inferior to the West. So it goes, and the cultures of the native inhabitants as culturally inferior to the West. Right. Historically, Western castiograph often features distortions, preposition, approximations, and commercials of places and true distances of places. The castiograph homeland of the center of Mapia for, I know it's supposed to be two words, right? Mapamandi, right? Those ideas were often realized to support imperialistic expressions. Contemporary castiograph, the popular perspective maps of the northern hemisphere drawn by the U.S. castiograph also frequently features distorted spatial relation, distance, size, mass of in between the U.S. and Russia, which, according to historian Jerome D. Fellerman, emphasizes the perspective inferiority, military, cultural, and geopolitical of the Russian other, meaning that we're bigger than them. We should be able to take them down. Is the mindset, right, that they put inside the people to push them forward. The Mappa Mundis is any medieval European map of the world, such as maps ranging in size and complexity from simple schematics maps, 25 meters, whatever, less, across elaborate wall maps, the largest of which the survival of the modern times, right, map. So just understand a map. I just wanted to put it in there. Right. Orientalists are the reception of the ambassadors of Demarcus. This is 1511. Features wildlife, the deers in the foreground that is not native to Syria. Now, we're coming to the end, people. The key concept of political geography, 2009, Allison Muntz proposed concrete definition of the other as the philosophical concept and as a term within phenomenology. As a noun, the other identifies and refers to the person and to a group of persons. As a verb, the other identifies and refers to a category and a label for persons and things. Phenomenology is the philosophical study of objectivity and reality. More generally, the subjectivity lived and experienced. It seeks to investigate the universal features of consciousness while avoiding assumptions about the external world, aiming to describe phenomena as they appear to the subject and to explore the meaning and significance of the lived experiences. Right? Post-colonial relationship demonstrated that in pursuit of empire, the colonizing power narrated the other whom they set out to save, dominate, control, and civilize. So the information that they giving you, teaching you how to read, it wasn't really about teaching you how to read. It was teaching you how to read their language, right? Taking you from your language and transforming you over to theirs, where their magic is already designed, right? And that means they called you black and pulling out the dictionary and it means this, that's their magic, right? In order to extract resources through colonization of the countries whose people the colonial power designated as the other, as factuated by Orientalist representation as the non-Western other. Colonialization and economic exploitation of a people in their land is misrepresented as a civilizing mission launched for the material, cultural, and spiritual benefit of the colonized people. Right, so that's why I put up the white man's burden, right? The white man's burden is a metaphor for the tremendous hardship and responsibilities of carrying out the effective and positive imperialism. Right? Central to the post-colonial perspective of the other as part of the dominated binary relationship, postmodern philosophy presents the other and otherness as a phenomenological and ontological progress for man in society. Public knowledge of the social identity of people classified as others is de facto acknowledgement of their being real. Thus, they are part of the body of politics, especially in the cities. As such, the postmodern cities is a geographical celebration of difference that move sites once conceived of as marginal to the social center of discussion and analysis of the human relations between outsiders and the establishment. Right? Let's look at the body public is a my fault. Let's look at reality first. Reality is the sum of aggregate of all that is real or extant within the universe, as opposed to that which is only imaginary, non-existent, or non-actual. The term is also used to refer to the ontological status of things, including their existence. In physical terms, reality is the totality, a system known and unknown. The body of politics is a polity which, as a city, realm, or state, considered metaphorically as the physical body. So when we're talking about the body politics, right, is metaphorically representing this body. Historically, a sovereign is typically portrayed as the body's head, the king, right? This is how we say the Europeans, right, set up this system. And the allegory may also extend to other etymological parts, as in political readings of Aspia's fables of the belly and the members. The image originates the ancient Greek philosophy of being in the 6th century BC and was later extended in Roman philosophy following the high and late medieval revival of the Byzantine Corpus Julius Civilis in Latin Europe. The body politics took the judicial jurisprudential significance by being identified with the legal theory of the corporation, gaining salience in political thought from the 13th century on. In English law, the image of the body politics developed into the theory of the king's two bodies, the crown and the corporate soul, right? So this is the new system. So the corporate soul, right, is separate from the crown. Oh, man, my fault there. So that comes to the end of this right here. So this is some readings that, you can go into. I wanted to, bring them up there. But I hope you understand how this system, you haven't been able, let me see something here. Hold on. Right, okay, you have. Okay, showing you how this system has been set up, right? So I hope you understand it. I hope you understand othering and how, at least how the spotted if is being used on you. That's the main objective, to see if it's being used on you to prevent it. Then after that, you can prevent it from being used on others, right? So with that being said, this is Esoteric Daydreams, The Awakening. I'm your host, Juice Wonder, right? Where I hope, your journey on, discovering these mysteries, that you also make it your duties to make it known, right? We tired of seeing the sham being worked on the people. Let's bring their secrets to the light, and that way they have to redesign and reconstruct. Right, I'm like Moses, bringing my staff, taking down the serpents. We'll be getting into some new shows, right? I got a new one coming up next. I hope you enjoy it. Until next time, peace.